Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our Sunlit Trees project. Oh, I love this project, it's fun. It seems really detailed and complicated, but you guys can do it no problem. We are going to be using, no. We're gonna do this project in 5 steps.
Oh snap.
So our very first step is we are going to do a light value background wash. Our second step is we will be putting in our light brown slash kind of gold foreground and midground trees. Our third step is we will be putting in our foreground trees using this darker brown color and the leaves and the shadows. Our fifth step is we will be putting in this foliage. And then the last step is just any details. That's it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's no problem.
I love those shadows.
Me too. Shadows are just... We're using 3 paint brushes. We have around 2, around 6, and around 12. Remember, you are free to use whatever brushes you have at home. Our 2 and 6 are our go-to brushes, so we literally have like hundreds of tutorials of projects that you can paint with just these 2. But if you're ready to expand your assortment, round 12 is great, wash 1 is great. We got a lot of suggestions for you if you're ready to add more brushes. Okay. And we're using 4 colors. Our very first color here is lemon yellow. Our second color is Tahoe blue. Our third color is burnt orange. And our fourth color here is orchid. And it's so great because neither is there a green or a brown on this page. And that's what all of this painting is.
I was gonna say, I don't see any pink necessarily.
But I just love to mix. Okay. I'm using Holbein soft tape and I tore my paper in half. This is a smaller project. You are free to use this on whatever size that you want. I just sometimes think a smaller paper is a little bit easier to paint on. You know,
like a smaller bite to chew on.
Yes, it doesn't feel as like overwhelming, like this big, huge white paper staring at you. So if that is a feeling that you experience, cut that paper in half, cut it into quarters, just cut it down to where you're like, you're just a piece of paper. I'm not intimidated by you. Yeah,
that's how I eat a tenderloin. Just gotta cut it in half.
Like those big tenderloin sandwiches.
Yeah, they come out with a big plate of food, and you're like, whoa, how many eat that?
And also have a pencil handy because we're going to do some light sketching before we start painting. So let's do our oath. If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thanks, Keenan.
You're welcome.
And I love starting that way. It's just a reminder that we're here to learn and grow. We're not here to be the best. We're not here to compete. We're not here to live up to some crazy expectations that are unrealistic that we set for ourselves. No, thank you. We're just here to have fun. Okay, so I'm going to start with using my round 12, and our very first step is we're going to be putting in our wash. But let's kind of do a general sketch of where things are going to go. Now, how I approach sketching before I paint is I do not try and think of all of the details and put those in. I try and just think of general placement of things. So if I'm looking at my paper here, I'm like, okay, so my like landscape ground line is going to be about a third of the way up, okay? And there's going to be my big old tree to the left here. And you'll notice that like your trees might be a little bit wonky. That's okay. Like we're not here to like perfect the overall shape. It's just general shapes and we can change it as we paint. And there's another tree and you can see it's a little bit up here. And there's one kind of over here across. So when you're putting in your trees, I want you to pay attention to 2 things. Kind of like, are they high or are they low? And the higher they go, the thinner they should kind of be generally, because they're moving away from us. And when things move away from us, they get smaller. We got a big old trunk just kind of peeking out over here. And let's do some like thinner trees back here. Can they see that fairly well? Should I go a little bit darker? I'm gonna go...
Maybe a little darker.
I'm gonna go a little darker just so you guys can see. But for you guys at home, try and make these lines as thin as possible because watercolor is transparent, so you're gonna be able to see these pencil marks through your paint. If you have a watercolor pencil, use a watercolor pencil to sketch because then those lines will just kind of blend out. But I do want to warn you with the watercolor pencil, what happens sometimes, like let's say you do a watercolor pencil for this, and then if you do a wash covering the whole thing, which is what we're going to do, all your tree lines are going to disappear. So that really only works some of the time.
Can you do the wash, then the watercolor pencil after it dries?
Yes. Yes, you can.
Okay.
Good thinking, Keenan.
Thank you. I'm a problem solver. Usually applies to how to get a snack, but I can get it to paint sometimes.
Listen, I think the snack one is way more valuable. Okay, so there are my trees. So you can see it. My foreground trees are bigger, and when we paint them, they're going to be darker in value. My background trees and my midground trees are thinner. And if we're doing like lots of layers, you can keep going, but... And maybe one here. All right, now let's get to painting. So I have the general idea of where my trees are gonna go, and right now I'm gonna put down my background wash. Now for me, the sun or the light source is gonna be over here. And wherever there is the light source, that's where it's gonna be the brightest value. And then from there, the values gradient? There's a gradient. There's a gradient from that. So if this is our lightest value area, that means it's gonna be like gold to yellow to white, then back again. Okay?
I like gradiate better. Because the sun also radiates heat, but it's a gradient in tones, so like I feel like it works.
Great, perfect.
Gradiate.
Gradiate.
You know what? Go gradiate today.
We're gonna gradiate.
We're gonna gradiate ourselves.
Okay, so I'm gonna mix my lemon yellow with a little bit of burnt orange to give it a little extra warmth, and I'm gonna add water to it because we want this to be a light value. So I'm adding just water to the side of it and taking my 12. I'm gonna start with this kind of really gorgeous gold color, and then I'm just gonna add water as I work my way down. And then on the right-hand side, I'm gonna grab some more color here. And I'm trying to work quickly because I want this to blend pretty seamlessly. And then at about this point is where I would grab more color. So you see how it's kind of like circular around this kind of area here. More gold. And I want the gold to go into the grass. So wherever you put your grass line, we're still going to be painting that kind of gold color. And now I want you to introduce green. So I'm going to grab a tiny bit of blue and put that with my gold mixture. And I'm bringing green to the party. And maybe like, because you guys know me, I love just like that extra pop of just saturation. I'm gonna grab some pure yellow and kind of like right here, I'm gonna drop in some pure yellow, like right where I think that sunlight is just like, bam, hitting that ground. Now our lemon yellow is a very bright yellow, so if you really want to like give it that gold tone, you can do that with that kind of orange color. It's up to you. If you want to do, this is definitely more like a bright yellow. This is definitely more of an orange yellow here, but this is your painting. You can make those decisions.
That's where the gradation starts to really get warm. The
Yes.
orange color.
Yes. Okay, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to take some of this gold color that I mixed, still using my 12, and add water to it because I still want it to be a light value. I'm gonna start putting in like, just like hints of leaves. So when I do hints of leaves, I basically just make like different brush marks, like kind of like this. So if you can see me holding my brush, I'll do it right here. Here, there we go.
Yes.
So I'm doing dashes, you can do dots. But you see how there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it?
Yeah.
That's on purpose. They're just brush marks. Like, don't think like I'm painting leaves. Think of it, or I'm drawing leaves. Think of it as I'm just making marks with my brush.
Think of it as you're hiding eyes in trees.
There we go.
Perfect. So
Perfect.
you're not painting leaves,
Perfect.
painting eyes. Similar shape. Completely different.
So just a little here. We'll do more in that next step, but it's just kind of letting you know that like there is like foliage. Now I kept the leaves more towards the top. I didn't really go forth in the trunks, but there's so many different types of trees that like sometimes those leaves kind of branch out from the bottom. Some of them, they kind of stay more towards the top. This is your painting. You guys decide how you want to do it. Okay, now we are going to do step 2. We're going to do our background and midground trees. And again, we're going to be using this kind of gold color. So I have this orange. Now, if you want to make it a little bit more brown, you can. If you want to do that, take some orchid. And a little bit of blue. So now it's more of a, I'll swatch it for you. It definitely has more of that brown tone. Now, if you want this forest to feel super sunny, like so warm, then I would stay more towards like the gold color than the brown colors for these trees. But again, this is your painting. I just want to give you the tools to make your own decisions. Okay, I'm gonna do kind of in between. I mixed a little bit more gold and I'm grabbing some of this brown and I'm gonna add some water to it because we want these to be a light value. And I'm going to start putting in the trees. If my paper is wet. I mean, if my paper is dry. So sometimes I'll just do like a tester tree. See how it's bleeding down here?
Yes.
At that bottom? Then my paper is still a little bit too wet to like put these in because I want these to stay fairly within their shape.
Is it risky to paint a spot that would have had less paint or water on it and then move on later, or should you just wait? I
mean, the only part that's really not going to have it would be like the center area. Yeah. That's most likely where it's dry. But I'm just going to grab my craft heat gun tool.
Oh, okay.
Do a little drying.
That's the drying dance.
This is our drying dance.
No music required other than the soft hum of the crafted tool.
You can do it like a snake.
You're not even pointing it at the paper at that point.
I just start doing this.
Ooh, then you can do this dance move.
Dance break. You don't even need a heat gun for this.
Sunlit
just
what?
Dance.
Sunlit dance floor.
Dance for a while, and when you come back to it, your paper will be dry. These are the tricks that LMA teaches you. You're welcome.
Please come back.
Okay, that feels better. All right, let's try this again. And usually, like, if I put one in and it kind of bleeds out, I'm not looking at this going, oh no, I just ruined my painting. I honestly just leave things like that because most of the time, if I try and like, if I narrow in and like zero in on that spot and try and like adjust it, usually it makes anything that I was trying to hide more prominent. So I'm a huge fan of like testing one. If it doesn't work, let it dry and then like keep going. And don't stress too much about the one that's a little wonky. Okay.
Because that would be dramatic.
Yeah.
You know, we're not trying to create drama here.
We're trying to have a rest from the drama.
Yes.
And if you want to put like little branches coming off, you can. And here's a skinnier guy. Now I'm using my 12 still, but if you want to use your 6 for this, go for it. It just depends on your comfort level of like how confident you feel getting like thin lines. I felt like I needed to add just a little bit more lemon yellow, like just a little bit more brightness. There. And you guys can make decisions as you go too, where if you're looking at your sketch that you initially put in and you're just like, this area actually seems kind of really bare, I'm gonna add another tree, like do that. I always view a sketch as a guide, not as like the final. I feel like I need like a thinner tree right here, so I'm gonna do just like that.
Oh, that's nice. A little sapling.
Yeah, just a little guy farther away. And I'm gonna do another little one right here, but I'm gonna go for like a yellow, like mostly just lemon yellow on this.
Cool.
And then if you want to add like a little bit of yellow, we'll do this more at the end, but kind of just where that light is radiating from. And you can see that I'm kind of like leaving my foreground trees because those ones are going to be darker in value. And now is where I'm going to add more of that kind of leaf texture. So grabbing yellow, that orange, that kind of gold color that we have, we're going to just start doing marks. Now again, we want this to be fairly light in value. And I'm keeping the marks kind of like if there was like a rainbow curve, I'm following like a rainbow curve for these little leaf marks. And let's switch to our 6 for this actually. And the reason why I switched to my 6 is it's a little bit easier to get like those smaller.
The colors right now make me think of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, I can see that. And I support that.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's nice.
I love that. Okay. Now we're moving on to step 3. We're going to do our dark trees. And before I do that though, I'm going to adjust my green on my grass. I love how warm it is up here. I want down here to be a little bit more green. And after I put in my trunks, it'll be so much harder to adjust that color. So I'm going to address that area before I put in those trunks. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Tahoe blue and a little bit of burnt orange. That's going to give me a super desaturated green. Maybe a little lemon yellow just to brighten it up. I'm going to start at the bottom here. And blend up. Now, depending on what your green looked like when you put this in, you might not need to do this part. And if you could avoid doing this part, I would. And the reason why is because since we are doing another layer of water on our painting, it's giving us an opportunity for the paper to have some edges and some like blooms because there'll be uneven water and drying times. It's not a huge deal. I actually don't think that blooms are the worst thing in the world, but some people get really distracted by them. Mostly it's the painter, not the viewer. So if you're someone that really bothers and you don't need to do this part, don't do this part.
You nailed the golden feel.
Yeah?
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now.
It's like Midas went through there and was just like, tree,
Touch.
gold. tree,
touch,
gold.
touch. Yes. Thanks, Keenan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, I know I love the idea of being able to communicate that feeling of the warmth in a painting.
Yes.
You know, like it's just, All right. So now we are going to put in our foreground trees. So we're gonna need to mix a brown. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that since the light is behind our trees, behind here, so if we were thinking our light source, it's like coming from here, right? That means our trees will actually be a darker value on the front facing us because the light is behind it. If the light source was above it or in front of it, the highlight would actually be the whole trunk instead of just where that sun ray is hitting off the edge.
Cool.
Does that make sense? And I know that I get a lot of questions about composition, lighting, and like how to set that up, which I totally understand. And I love those questions because it shows me that like you guys are ready to just start making your own paintings, which is fabulous. Like that is the dream and that is the goal with these. But a lot of the times I want to explain to you why we're doing it, but there are some concepts that are just a little bit tricky to like fit in a tutorial and also like not overwhelm you with all this information. Because so much of just starting something is one, getting the courage to start and just getting used to water to paint ratio and like really utilizing your supplies. So I've been trying to figure out like, how can I help you guys by answering your questions and giving you that information without like overwhelming you and also making these tutorials like 3 hours long. So I've been working on something that I'm super excited about.
Okay, sweet.
It is an ebook that is dedicated to intermediate and maybe people who are ready for that next step. And in this ebook, I'm going to be talking specifically about forest compositions, how to set up, how to draw, what to look for, what the rules are. I'm going to be talking about light sources and like how depending on where your light sources is, how that will affect your shadows. So I'm going to be giving you like, so if you loved this project and felt success and you're just like, I want to make these on my own without having to like walk through this, I'm putting together something for you. Yeah.
That's exciting.
I know, I'm really excited about it. And on top of that, there will be like a step-by-step lesson in it that's more detailed. Do you kind of want to see what we're painting?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
100% I do.
Okay.
Do you have a timeline for us or is that a secret?
It should be when this tutorial releases on YouTube.
Oh, snap.
It should be available that day. That's what I'm being told.
That's exciting.
I know, okay. So this is kind of what we will be working on. Isn't it just?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see it's similar in concept, but through this, we'll be doing a project. We'll be doing this project step by step. So I'll take you through how to do that or something similar to it. And then I'm going to give you all of the educational materials as to setup and lighting and composition and depth. So you can take this and start creating your own forest scenes by yourself. Okay.
Wow.
I know. I'm really excited about it, but when we started talking about light, I realized that there's probably a lot of questions about like, well, what if I want my light source to be here? Or what if I have this reference photo, but I don't like where the light source is. I want the light source coming from here. Those are great questions and a little bit more advanced answers. And so I put together something for you that can help you with that.
That's great, because I was going to suggest you could put, when you were starting, I was like, well, it'd be really great too to just put your light source in a different spot.
Yeah.
Like you could do a series of, it's like start on the left and slowly move to the right and take pictures of them individually.
Yes.
But I had not considered what would change when you put the light source in a different spot.
Because that's the interesting thing about light. It informs like everything that it's around. So it wouldn't just be like, oh, the light source is over here. It would be like, okay, how does that actually affect the shadows? If the light source is in front, our shadows are actually going this way now. If our light source is streaming through the middle, it would create a spotlight effect. So like, I'll walk you through those different scenarios in that ebook, so then you can like change light sources depending on what you feel like painting.
That's awesome.
Okay, sorry, I just got really excited. Now we're gonna move on. Now we're gonna move on to our browns. So I'm gonna take Orchid, bring it to the middle, and I'm gonna take Tahoe Blue, and I'm gonna take Burnt Orange. And look at this gorgeous brown that I made.
Yeah, that's amazing brown. Well done, Sarah.
Thank you.
That's a great brown color that you mixed in 8 seconds.
Keenan, you can mix brown, okay? You just had one bad experience.
It was one time.
Don't let that one time define you.
One time for 1 hour.
So when you guys mix brown, think of brown as dark orange, and essentially think of it as mixing complementary colors. And if it's not getting the warmth that you want, just add more yellow and orange. Add that warmth in. Here's that brown. Oh,
that's a good brown.
Okay, so when I paint my trees, I'm going to use my 6, and I'm actually going to leave the middle chunk not brown. I'm going to leave it white.
Oh.
And that's because I want to do this highlight on here.
Oh.
So I'm taking this dark brown, and I talked a lot, so my painting is dry now.
Is that good or bad?
That is good.
That's good. Okay,
we want it to be dry so it stays sharp.
Yes, we like sharp trees. Well,
and then when I get to that middle, I'm just gonna like use water. So it can be a light brown. That. And then go up, and then we're gonna introduce that dark brown to the top. And if your tree starts to get a little wonky, like it starts leaning or something, that's okay. There's a tree like that that exists in nature. And I'm gonna take this yellow, and right in this middle spot right here, I'm gonna drop in this yellow. But I want the transition from this yellow to brown to feel more natural. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of orange, and where those meet, I'm gonna put in orange, and then a little bit of brown. And I'm just gonna kind of work the area back and forth.
One of my favorite things about this painting, which may be strange, but I love that there's no massive amounts of foliage around the base of the trees themselves. I picture that grass being like soft, like moss, you know? Or a golf course.
Yes, like a little forest section in a golf course.
Yes.
I can get behind that. I'm just gonna lift a little bit of this yellow out, just a tiny bit. So this is a damp brush that I'm kind of just lifting. Now what we're doing here, and this is what I've learned when painting like these kind of sunny scenes, is if you really want to get that feel of that sun ray that's hitting, and it's kind of like, you know when you're moving behind a tree and you see the sun and it's blinding, and then you put that tree right where that sun is, so it blocks that blinding, but you still get the edge of that ray? That's what we're trying to do here. And when that happens, when you're using something to block that blinding light, it actually has a little bit of a glow and a highlight from that ray that's just kind of overpowering that thing. So that's why it's just like whatcha, you know, like we're kind of trying to get those rays without doing the ray line. You see what I'm saying?
Totally.
Okay.
I can picture it in my imagination too.
Good. And I'm gonna just kind of darken the right edge a little bit more.
It would look really cool if you could add some mist. So
yeah.
So I need you to
just do that really quick.
I think you can do it. I believe in you.
Can you just throw that in really quick?
Throw mist in.
I can't.
If you would have had a spray bottle at that moment, just started spraying water, that would have been so funny.
Okay, so now I'm gonna do this tree, and so this tree is interesting because it's not as close as these two trees, but it's not as far away as these trees. So I'm gonna do a brown that's in between the value and the hue of these two, okay? So basically I'm just gonna take that brown, add a little bit of water to it and a little bit of warmth to it. So that's yellow or orange, depending on what your heart desires. I'm gonna put this tree in. Now we're gonna do kind of the same thing with this one, where we're kind of like letting that section be a little bit highlighted. So I just use water for the middle, and then we'll go back to that brown. And I had my trunk going this way, but that's kind of what this tree is doing. And so to do something kind of opposite, so it doesn't feel all like going the same way, I'm gonna have this little guy come out. Okay, and let's do a little yellow right there while it's wet so it can just kind of bleed out. And I need to darken this trunk. Now that one got a little bit thicker than I wanted. That's okay. Doesn't it just feel like the sun is right there, just like...
It's almost like it's rising, like it's early morning. Mm-hmm. And the more you paint, the later in the day it's getting.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yes, I like that. And I decided to just add a little bit more brown onto this guy, since they are pretty close.
Yeah, they're
on the same kind of plane here. Okay, and now we're gonna do this guy. And so this one, even though it's in our foreground, our sunlight's coming from here, so it's not gonna have that same kind of like blind, like highlight as we do over here. Okay. And we'll have a branch come out. And it's okay if they cross each other, right? Like that's what we would see. They overlap as these layers of trees. Okay.
That's nice.
Thank you. And now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do a little bit of leaves. Just at the top, just a hint. And of course, this is your choice, if you wanna do leaves or not. I liked the idea of adding a little bit because this is so warm, so yellow and gold. I wanted to put a little bit more green in the foreground to kind of balance that warmth, but you don't have to. So I got this green, I mixed together my Tahoe blue, my yellow, my burnt orange. And using my 6, just kind of along the top, I'm gonna do like dashes and marks. And again, I'm not being too precise with my mark making. I'm kind of just going for it. You can even, I like to like do a really light wash wet and then like drop in some dark green and just let that move. And you can do it in front of the tree as well, but just so you know, this dark brown was a very dark value, so the tree just might not, I mean the green might just not show up the same way on top of that brown because watercolor is transparent, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Now the leaves that are kind of closest to this radiating sun, I'm gonna have those be a little bit more yellow. And if you want to use your 2 for this, to get those really tiny little marks, you can, and then as it moves kind of away from that radiating sunlight, that's where those leaves can get a little bit darker.
This is really coming together.
It's starting to come together, isn't it? I put a little bit more than my reference, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. Okay, now we're gonna do our shadows.
Ooh, this is fun.
It is. Because shadows are pretty simple, and like when you put them in, they really just like ground whatever you're doing, and it just kind of adds that dimension. So I'm going to grab a little bit of blue. So I'm gonna make like a dark desaturated green for my shadows. So I already have this kind of green from when I did the leaves, and I'm gonna add blue to it. And let's add some orange to it. More blue.
Would it be really trippy to do a light source and then shadows in an opposite direction? Would that like throw you off completely? Don't do this, don't do it now, but I'm like in your brain, would that be like...
So you're saying like even though my light source is here, if I did my shadows going away from it.
Yeah. Or even on the ground, like in a different direction.
Like going this way?
From what? Yes. Yeah.
So what are you asking me? Like,
would it be trippy? Like, would it be noticeably different to where you're like, oh, would that throw, like, for me, for an example, as a beginner, if I were to put the shadows in the wrong direction, if I didn't think about the light hard enough, would it throw it off the painting to where I'd be confused and not know why?
Not necessarily, actually. Not
Okay.
necessarily, because sometimes our brain, like for people who aren't familiar with painting or like looking at things for what they are, our brain would just say light, shadow, and like move on.
Gotcha.
Where like if people are familiar with light source and how that would affect the shadow, okay, it kind of reminds me of The Office. Have you seen The Office where Pam did the building, the illustration of the building, and Michael
Yes.
Scott loved it and they framed it, and Dwight was just like, the light source is totally off on that. The shadow is going the wrong way.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily notice that,
Right. Okay.
but if somebody calls it out, then you're like,
Oh, snap.
yeah.
Yeah.
But for us as painters and artists, that's sometimes a good thing because then we're just like, sweet, like I can make my own worlds here, and sometimes it won't even throw my painting off, so that's cool. But other times it's actually harder because we might not pick up on it right away. It's then takes longer for us to notice and then apply it to our own paintings and our own artwork. The other tricky thing about light is there are multiple light sources that can affect it. For example, if you have a sunlight streaming in and there is a white building somewhere near here, that could bounce light off and create multiple light sources. It's the same thing with like water, and you know what I mean? So like the
Yes.
reflection of the light source is also a light source, which will affect the things around it. It gets deep. It goes there. So, but I would say if I did my shadows going this way, I don't know if a lot of people would be like, that painting's now messed up. I don't know if they would read that.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I kind of want to gray this color down, so I'm adding a little bit of orchid to it. Basically, my goal with this color, with this shadow, is I want it to be cooler, but I don't want it to be black or gray because we have so much like color variation going on. So you can always like, that's too gray. See how gray that is?
Yeah.
So let's add a little bit more green and blue to that. Because the thing with shadows is they're still on top of the surface that we're painting on. They're not its own like totally separate thing. That shadows are on top, they're on top of this grassy field. So they have to kind of relate to the grassy field. That feels good. I like that.
Me too.
Okay. So I have my 6, I have my shadow. I'm looking at the angle of my light source. So let's say my angle, if it's coming from here, then I would kind of want to like angle it from that. Boop. And then you can go darker. Like how darker the shadow is just like giving our viewer like how strong that light is, okay? And you want to go to the base of the trunk of the tree. Also with shadow is its darkest right where it meets, and then it lightens up as it goes out. And we got this guy kind of coming here. So I like to put it in.
Shadow, that's
Add some
crazy. How different that makes that look.
Doesn't that just like add?
Yes.
Okay, now when you get to these guys, they're shadows, but remember they have to stay in line with the thickness that they are. And you can have them keep going this way. So see, my shadows, our angles on this are slightly off, but that's okay. I don't think it's a huge deal. This guy is a big shadow here. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, and I need to do these. Okay, I'm just gonna have them go to the right.
Gotcha.
But really, if my light source, okay, If my light source is here, these angles make sense.
Right.
If my light source is here, then this shadow would go this way. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So I kind of just like moved my light source halfway through, which it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, the sun moves.
Yeah. Okay. Did I get all my shadows on my trees?
I think so.
Okay. And if you want to go in and be like, I actually want this to just be a little bit darker right here, maybe a little bit darker right here, you can. This is your painting. Explore, play with it. This is just a half sheet. And sometimes what I do if I'm feeling like really stressed about a painting is I'll paint two simultaneously, especially with these smaller ones. And then that way I know I have a backup. So it's much easier for me to like make decisions that I wouldn't make because I know I got another one right here. So you can be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? You can take chances a little bit more when you have two paintings going.
Risky.
Yeah.
Risk it for the biscuit.
I like that. Okay. Now we are on just about our last step here. We're going to put in our bushes. So I'm going to pretty much mix all my colors. Just all of them together to get a black.
Oh, what?
And you want to
excellent.
And you want to lean more towards blue and orchid for this color than yellow and orange, because that's going to give it the cool feel as opposed to brown. Okay. So now I got my black.
Like prom king cool versus whatever I was at prom.
Okay, so I got this nice black color here. Maybe a little bit more blue. Maybe a little bit. I just kept on mixing. Okay. And using my 6, or you can use whatever brush you feel comfortable with. I'm just going to start kind of putting in these bushes. Now the chunks towards like the base. Oh, do you know what? I want to dry this first. My shadows are still wet.
Oh, okay.
But I can talk during it. So when you're painting like foliage, and I did the similar thing with the leaves, when it's like dense, like more in the center, you can do large chunks because there's so many layers. And then as you get to the edge of your foliage, that's where you would want to take a smaller brush like a 2 and do a little more detail lines, because since it's an edge, you'll see those different shapes more than in the center where there's so many layers, especially if it's a silhouette. You really would actually only see little moments of like maybe light or something. Okay, so now that that's dry, and also maybe you don't need to put in this foliage. For me, when I was painting this project, I wasn't planning on putting this foliage in, but then I just felt like that bottom left corner was a little bit bare. It was like a gap almost in my composition. And so I'm like, okay, let's just do this silhouette bush right here, you know?
Yes.
Why not?
Why not?
And I think it actually speaks nicely to this over here. I feel like that kind of, these two speak to each other in terms of their shape. So it almost like frames in our painting.
I thought of balance.
Yes.
You mentioned it earlier today.
Yes. And maybe there's like this one branch that's like coming out. Now I'm going to switch to my 2. Kind of just, but remember, our brains like to make patterns, so try not to do like even spacing or the same brush stroke, and mark across the whole edge. Just do it once every while, here and there. Well, and the fun thing too with what I'm doing in the ebook, which I'm really excited about, is like with our subscriptions, we use liquid watercolors, which are so vibrant and fun. Like I love liquid watercolors because of how colorful they are. But I also know that some people prefer to use like tube paints like Daniel Smith or Winsor & Newton, like whatever you have. And I want to show you how you can use those to make these projects, but we can't always use them in the box. So with our with the ebook, I'm using different supplies so you guys can get that full breadth of education and you can decide what works best for you. And that way, there's something here for you, you know?
Nice.
Okay, what do we think?
That looks awesome.
Isn't that fun?
Yes.
Gosh, I love this project.
When you threw those shadows in, man. Because before I was like, Sarah's on it again. Just kidding.
Oh gosh, I hope you guys had fun painting this. I hope you felt success getting that sunlight and that warmth in your painting and really making it like sing almost, you know, like with that brightness. And if some of you are asking yourselves, I really want to do this and I want to be able to do this on my own without having to totally rely on all of these things, I made something for you and I'm super excited for it. I hope you guys like it. And if you are on Facebook, you can join our watercolor group. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It is big and there are many people there with a lot of experience and a little bit of experience, but don't be intimidated. It's a very kind, supportive group and we can always learn from each other. I don't care if you've been painting for 20 years. I don't care if you've been painting for a month or anywhere in between. You can always learn and grow. There's always something more that you can do. If you're on Instagram, you can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. I don't think I have anything else I gotta say.
Ebook.
And also, this is just, I think I'm so in love with this because I've really fallen in love with painting sunlight in the last year. And I'm really excited that I was able to share that with you. And I hope that you guys keep going with it because it's just the best. So if you need any of these supplies that we used in this project, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.